Hey, left, right, out. I've been kind of sick the last week or so. It's been interesting times, ear infection, but there's been a lot of things going on, and I hope nobody thinks I went silent because the market's just going up, up, up. No, I actually want to talk about that. It seems that it can't be stopped, right? Once again, the market is just doing what the market does, but we got to look deeper into the mechanisms of what's going on and some of the things to understand the economic calamity that is taking place right now. And I believe calamity because we built an entire economic system based off cheap money, businesses that shouldn't be in existence, capital that's being driven into places where it shouldn't be, governments overspending to the point now where they're literally, in order to keep the train running, yes, you have to have the Fed monetizing their debt. Otherwise, they crowd out the capital markets. We're still seeing shortages. Prices are still rising. Anecdotal evidence here. Went in to get, I always do something with my daughter and get ice cream. That ice cream that I normally get, the price jumped. It had been 20% earlier in the year. Or I wouldn't even say earlier in the year. Probably about 3 months ago. Just yesterday, I went in there and it jumped another 10%. So, and that's not including some of the other items that I've noticed that have gone up here and there. It seems to snap every couple months, bam, more prices are being pumped up for just grocery items and consumer items. Not to mention oil. Another thing I've talked about in the past is trying to do an oil change on diesel, which we'll get into that. Diesel is something else. Trying to find those oil products is still super hard. It's not as hard as it was earlier in the year, but it still is hard. They quickly go out of stock and slow to replenish. Speaking of that, we've had pullback in oil in general. It's kind of popping here and there. I'm not looking at it today. But one of the things I have noticed, even with the pullback in oil, diesel has skyrocketed well above $5 again. Really quickly, and I've seen articles about there's a diesel shortage. Well, diesel is the lifeblood of the supply chain, what's left of it. It doesn't spell good news on that front when it comes to moving products from point A to point B. You look at that price. I'm here in an arid country where it's relatively cheaper fuel prices than elsewhere. And the diesel just skyrocketed 50 cents within less than a week or so. We're well above $5 again. The cheapest I can get is $5.10. But for the most part, you're paying here where I'm at $5.20. I'm sure in you go further west or east or up north, you're looking at closer to the $6 range. I'm not sure. That's just what I'm assuming. It's pretty gnarly out there. And it seems like we've almost become desensitized to some of these things, which these are breaking point. People can only operate for so long with the prices they are unless their wages are actually staying up, which they're not. More people are working one or two, three jobs. And you can kind of parse that out with some of the data that's come out when it comes to the job situation. What else was I going to say? We've got one of the leaks that I found interesting because we talked about Biden getting snuffed by the Saudis, and we've been kind of bringing up some of these Saudi Arabian things because they do back the dollar in a sense. It's been released or kind of leaked that it's been leaked by MBS that he kind of has no respect for our president, makes fun of him, finds him inept, and that's no surprise to us. That's something that should have been known. The other thing, I guess, that's going on outside of the markets is we're starting to see a lot of the cracks starting to open up. Well, one in housing, but I was going another route. The sweet and sour sniffles, the stuff that I can't say, the stuff that is still being purged from the tubes of you, and maybe not so much on Rumble, some of these other platforms, but definitely on there in Google. You can't Google search anything hardly unless you have to go multiple pages. You have to really refine your searches to get any real pertinent, real information. But the sweet and sour sniffles and its subsequent treatments, primarily the ones that go into your cell and teach it to create certain components of said pathogen and supposedly to build immunity. We're starting to see a lot of cracks opening up on that, whether it be the actual companies coming out and telling you that they never really tested for this, whether it be some of the lack of evidence and the pushing some of the emails coming out of the CDC and the CDC voting on certain issues pertaining to that in young Americans. We are seeing those cracks opening. The veil is being pulled over where some people's eyes are being opened. And so in some cases, the restrictions on that information are now not so harsh. So you're starting to see a lot more information, but people are opening their eyes to these sudden deaths, to these ailments that are happening afterwards, and to the lack of real evidence that these things, because there's two of them in particular that are being placed into people's bodies, that serve almost no benefit, turns out, and put you at significantly higher risk than otherwise would be for such things, certain other elements or side effects or adverse effects. So those things, you need to look those up yourself, because it's really hard if I want to even stay on this, which I don't know about YouTube anyway. They already knocked me. I'm already down. Channel's not really growing, but on Rumble, it's happening. So we just got to understand that you got to go look at that. And you can't just Google this stuff. So let's say you want to look up, you want to understand scientifically, or what the knife edge of studies is coming up with. You really can't hardly find that stuff. You're starting to be able to find it on YouTube, because there are some doctors and whatnot that are being allowed now to post this stuff. Before, it didn't matter if you're an MD, DO, MP, PA. It didn't matter. It didn't matter how your PhD in molecular biology or epidemiology. It didn't matter. You were getting stuffed off unless you towed the line. And there's emails now, not only through the CDC, what they knew, but now we have some emails, or we have evidence that there was collusion between these companies. We already knew that. If you followed anybody that had an alternative view, you knew the collusion was there between the government. I just spit on my camera. Between the government and these tech companies, which the tech companies in a sense are acting as an arm of the government. This is the very definition of fascism, but it's also legal terms. The government can't stifle, if they so choose to operate with and this is my opinion, and having seen certain laws through states, through law enforcement, understanding what an agent in lieu of is, I guess. I mean, there's lawyers that are going to tear me up over they have way better understanding of this, but from my understanding from a law enforcement perspective, when we've gone over some of the laws, and I didn't even know this, even having really good knowledge of the Constitution, that if a government agency uses a private individual to circumvent certain procedures or constitutional rights, those private entities are acting in lieu of the government, or they're acting as an arm essentially, and they shouldn't be able to negate your rights. And in fact, that's what the government is doing through these tech companies. Somebody's head needs to roll, right? So there's some interesting lawsuits out there where Fauci is going to be deposed. A number of other individuals will be deposed. I hate to say it, but in order to just keep some kind of justice system in this country, these people need to be brought up on charges. These people lied, they manipulated, they hindered real scientific advancement in order to, whatever it is, to maintain some kind of power control, to make a compliant state, I don't know, to make money, all the above, power, money, a God complex, whatever it is, it was going on. It could be different. It could be one or the other for a number of individuals, and they're not mutually exclusive, these drivers of human nature, especially when you have when you get that kind of power. But somebody needs to be brought up in charges, whether it be lying to Congress, whether it be the government collusion within private entities to destroy people's lives, to build a narrative. I mean, there's and also who knows how a lawyer could finagle criminal liability when it comes to funding the research into this stuff, and it comes to knowingly distributing something that doesn't have much evidence in its ability to help, but has a tremendous amount of evidence that there's other things going on with it. Stifling whistleblowers. How about the whistleblower talking about some of the clinical trials, some of the shenanigans that were going in there, dropping people out, people that did have certain effects, calling them stomach aches, all kinds of weird stuff in order to pad numbers. So we've lost integrity, one, in the scientific community, two, in the justice system, and something needs to be done. So we need real scientists, real educated people to take back that that mantle, which we've known throughout history. I mean, people talk about religion being the one that stifles any kind of innovation, the one that oppresses people. Look at science. Science has done it throughout history. Some of the most maniacal things, some of the most devastating things have come from scientific community acting unscientific, because it's just the nature of man, in a sense, or certain people have a prediction, or the word predilection, or anyway, they have a driver to that. So to that power in imposing it on people, where science is a methodology and it's not some religion. It's constantly trying to prove itself wrong and develop a better understanding of the world around us by, testing things, repeating those tests, by giving it to peers and having them try to test it, or having people challenge those ideas. No matter how concrete those ideas are, challenge them. And the fact that we are stifling that kind of challenging, and it doesn't help us sharpen, iron sharpens iron, that saying, doesn't help us sharpen that blade and become more refined in our knowledge. If we had done that in the beginning, even, granted all these conspiracy theorists that were right, but if we'd allowed we'd had the scientific inquiry, if we'd had that, robust debate, we'd have came to that truth that these conspiracy theorists have told us about. We'd have come to those truths earlier. We'd have saved a lot more lives. We would have, whether that be medically, economically, psychologically, whatever it is, a lot more people would be in a lot better place today if we would have just adhered to actual scientific methodology instead of some kind of everybody trusts the science as a religion. So I don't know, just some thoughts. Watch the bond market. I guess go back to the economics, last bit, 12 minutes in. Watch the bond market. There has been some weird moves in the 10-year and all that. Things are happening. Watch the dollar demand from overseas. Apparently, there's been some really nasty auctions in the short term with foreign investors, which is, what are they doing with these dollars that we keep sending them? But there's also some other things I'd like to get into when it comes to, there's a lot of ads about Chinese people buying land, but then they fail to mention that we've been buying all their cheap goods forever, and we've been throwing our inflated dollars over there. So it's like, well, what do you expect them to do with the dollars that they're accumulating by giving them our actual productivity and us just printing things and sending them over there? I don't know. I'm not saying it's right that they come over here and buy land. I don't want them to. I hate it. It's one of those things that viscerally I don't like because of what it's doing to the American public. But what do you expect when you're getting all these, when you are incentivized to buy Chinese goods, and then at the same time you're printing all these dollars and sending them there? These guys, they have to use them for something, and a lot of times they, maybe they're not investing in the treasury market. What we kind of want them to. They're actually investing in hard assets or oil or whatever the case may be. Which, another thing, we'll start looking at the cracks of the petrodollar. It's something else. But anyway, like, subscribe. Talk to you later. Peace.